In today's episode, we are going to be diving into breaking cycles. As someone who has battled addiction, I know how destructive some cycles in our lives can be. Throughout my own life, especially my recovery journey, I've learned how to break unhealthy patterns and how to build new, healthier ones. Today, I'm going to share with you how I learned how to break those unhealthy cycles in my life. And then next episode, I will dive a little bit deeper and share how I have worked to rebuild some new, healthier cycles as well. So let's dive right in and learn how to shatter those destructive cycles while also knowing you soon will have the ability to replace those with healthier, happier cycles, building that life that you truly do want. Hi, I'm Jenna, and I'm always rambling. Just ask my husband. I have a great family and a pretty cool life, but I'm a recovered alcoholic. That's hard to say, but my goal is to inspire and educate to help others hopefully find life beyond an addiction. I'm all things: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Getting healthy, momming, and politics. Get offended easily? You better stop listening. There is no point in wasting that Botox by stressing yourself out listening to a podcast. Welcome to Ramblings of an Addict with Jenna Dix. Today's episode brought to you by products and services that I'm thoroughly addicted to. Figuring out your marketing strategy as a small business owner can be overwhelming, and doing it yourself can make you feel like you want to pull your hair out. But fear not, because the How Marketing Company has got you covered. Don't settle for just any marketing team. Trust the experts at the How Marketing Company to ensure your success and help you keep your hair intact. Check the show notes for more details so that you can take the first step towards stress-free marketing. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you here on today's episode. Today, I'm really excited to dive into this content. Breaking cycles. Honestly, I've joked at points like I'm actually addicted to kind of breaking cycles in my life. And I think there's some truth to that because I have, and I'm proud to say that I have shattered quite a few cycles within my own life. I will definitely get into later here in the episode. There's still some that I know that I want to break. I'm sure I have some, that I probably should break. For example, I was actually reading some of the reviews for my podcast, and somebody said, make sure you are aware that she swears or she cusses sometimes in her podcast, which yes, I do. I say it right in the kickoff, if you get offended easily, don't listen. But yeah, it is a good thing to remember that sometimes some colorful language does pop out of my mouth. So if you are somebody that likes to listen to podcasts around your kids, be aware of that. Maybe this isn't one that you want to share in front of them, especially if you don't want them hearing those words. For me, that's just not a cycle that I really care to break 100%. I don't know. I've joked like at points that it's part of my identity. I will admit that I have actually reduced the amount that I cuss in my life a lot. My dad, he was a railroader / construction guy, so colorful language came out of his mouth on the regular. And then he played sports, like beer league sports. And I grew up around that. So it's not like all those young guys, would watch their mouths. Not that they shouldn't have to. They're having fun. They're out doing their hobbies. And I grew up around those fields. So I heard colorful language my whole life. And then, I don't know, it just became part of my own lingo. So I do know that it's not always appropriate. I'm the type of person that I can turn it off and on when I need to. I worked in the schools. It's not like I swore in the classroom or in front of the students. And, but yeah, sometimes you just need a colorful adjective in your vocabulary. So take that as a warning, though, that if you are listening to this podcast, never listened before, some cuss words may pop out. And speaking of that, make sure, like I said, I read that in a review. Make sure if you have yet to go on and rate and review the podcast, please do. Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, either one. I definitely appreciate all of those reviews. It keeps the podcast more relevant in the standings and stuff. Hopefully gets a few more eyeballs to notice the podcast, and we can help a few more people with the information that I'm sharing every episode. So rate and review if you have not yet done so. But with that, today I want to dive right in here. As I said in the intro, today we're going to be talking about breaking those unwanted cycles that you have in your life. Next episode, we are going to be talking about how to build healthy cycles into your life. So make sure, listen to today's episode, take away some tips on how you can start to cut the crap in your life that you don't want there anymore. And then next episode is going to be kind of the cherry on top. All right, I got rid of these crappy cycles that I no longer want. What can I replace it with? Okay, so it is kind of a two-parter, but even if you just hear one, it's still going to be great content. All right, so jumping into getting rid of the cycles in your life that you no longer want, right? Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about top cycles that people typically want to break. We're going to talk about the top struggles that people have when they try to break a cycle. And then finally, we are going to talk about some great tips that you can incorporate to truly work to break those unwanted cycles. So the first thing, talking about some of just some general facts about cycles that people typically want to cut and get rid of in their life. I just did some general searching, and the top 10 cycles that people typically want to break in their own lives are, the top one is addiction. Addiction can come in so many freaking forms. I myself, being a person that I had my fair share of battles with different addictions, which I'll dive into a little bit here today as well. But y'all know from the song in the beginning, right? Like, alcohol was the biggest cycle that I ever had to break. The second top one, abuse. And I think we all know as well, abuse can come in a range of forms also. The third one, poverty. The fourth, lack of education. Fifth, unhealthy relationships. The sixth cycle people typically want to break is negative self-talk. So kind of just being your own worst critic, which in today's society, I think this has always been an issue, but in today's society, it's so much more prevalent because social media has let us peek at everyone's highlight reel. So that negative self-talk is more likely to pop out because we're sitting there thinking about, well, Susie Smith does XYZ and Jack Joe does, 1, 2, 3, and I'm over here not even getting a 1 or an A, right? It's so easy to compare. And then that negative self-talk just goes into overdrive. So I'm not surprised that it's in the top 10 at all. The seventh one that people typically try to break in their lives is having a lack of empathy. The eighth is overworking, so having a crappy work-life balance mentality. 9 is racism. And 10 is mental health challenges. So I think, as I go over that list of 10, which, each of those has their own range and gamut. So it's not like just 10 simple cycles that people are trying to break. It's thousands, if not millions of unhealthy cycles that can fit into those categories. So, but when we sit here and we hear about those, I'm pretty sure we're all like, well, yeah, those are all really unhealthy things that we probably don't want in our lives. We're all smart enough to know that. But at the same time, I think we're all also smart enough to know, well, crap, trying to break a cycle, that's freaking hard, right? You're trying to take something that's just routine, just part of you, part of your identity almost for some people, and get rid of it. And then you add on top that there's other struggles that come into play for why breaking a cycle can be so freaking hard. And I did, again, a little bit of research and just with my own knowledge as well, kind of created some different categories of why it is so hard to break some of these cycles. First and foremost, I think lack of support in breaking a cycle is one of the top, if not the top reason people struggle. Whether it's you don't have the support of your spouse or you just have no one behind you and kind of rooting you on. It's important to know, you need to sit down sometimes and really think and reflect and paper to pen and actually, pen to paper, vice versa. Actually write it down and be like, who would root me on in this? And if you seriously cannot think of anyone, right? I understand why that can be incredibly defeating. Me like, well, crap, I can't even do this. I can't break a cycle. No one's in my corner. Remember, there's professionals out there that will very easily step behind you and support you. And as long as you find a good professional, they're going to do it in a very authentic, genuine way. It's not going to be like, oh, well, I'm paying them, I have to. They're going to have to stand behind me. Typically, if you find a good professional that's great at their craft, they're going to stand behind you and actually truly care about your progress. The second reason a lot of people kind of trip up is triggers will get them, into a flow where they're like, well, shit, I cannot do this. And I know for a lot of my conservative pals out there, trigger warnings and things of that sort can be kind of frustrating. I think our society has taken this to a whole new crazy level. But I do think if we pause and get past the, oh, I'm so over that phrase, right? Triggers are a real deal thing. Being somebody who's gone through different things that have triggers, they are real. If you've ever been assaulted in some way and something pops up and reminds you of that, it can be incredibly triggering. And it can make it really hard to break a cycle that is linked to that. Because, negative thought patterns can go into action, or behaviors that have been linked to that go into action. Just honestly, almost as automatic as auto drive on our cars, right? The third reason that a lot of people kind of trip up and do not break cycles is resistance from the people in their lives that they care about. For me, this came into play with, not drinking, because I try to sit here sometimes and think did I share these facts in previous episodes, or is this the first time I talked about this exact thing? I don't know if I ever shared, how many times I truthfully told myself it's time to give up booze. But I knew multiple times in my head, okay, this isn't good for me. I should probably try to quit. And there would be people in my lives that are like, why? I think of just, my first husband. Super frustrated sometimes when I would want to give it up, because in his eyes that meant he would have to give it up, and he wasn't supportive a lot of times, right? And same with, if you have a partner, for example, maybe you're like, crap, I'm really addicted to gambling, I want to give it up, but your partner loves to gamble too, and they're just going, we don't have an issue, let's just keep going, we're fine, we'll only go once a month instead. Or friends and family can sometimes be resistant because they don't want you to break that habit, because they don't want to have to break that habit. Or they feel like it'll shine a spotlight on that they also have that unhealthy cycle. Another reason a lot of people struggle with breaking cycles is internal resistance, right? We can definitely have that external, other people, but hey, sometimes we stand in our own way. And this might just be because we are completely drawn to that cycle. It's now our identity, and we just don't know any other way. Or it can be like a debilitating thing of, if I say I'm going to do that, I'm going to break this habit, and then I don't, I'm going to feel really bad about myself. And I see this in any goal, right? That self-doubt, that fear of failure. that fear of guilt if I say I'm going to do this and then I don't. This happens with all goals. I don't want to say I'm going to lose weight and then not do it, and then I'll feel bad about myself. That self-resilience is real in almost anything we want to progress in within our lives, but definitely within breaking cycles. The next reason would be fear of the unknown. Especially if this is a cycle that has been around for a really long time, it could be really easy to sit there and be like, oh my word, well then what? What will I do instead? What will life look like? I shared before, breaking the cycle of alcohol for myself, trying to figure out, well, it's Saturday at 5 o'clock. I'm not going to the bar. What do I do? That's really hard. That was really hard for me. And people may be like, are you serious? Well, at that time, I didn't have McKenna. Haley was gone every other weekend. And we'd have a weekend completely open, and we'd typically go out. Well, what are we going to do instead? Or it was just weird. And that, I think, is with all cycles. You don't know. You don't know what lies ahead. You don't know what obstacles are going to pop up. You don't know how to recreate things. It's hard. So that fear of the unknown is 1000% real with breaking cycles. And the final thing that I was thinking of is, breaking cycles, you may lose a sense of who you are. You may lose a little piece of what you claim as your identity. I remember doing a social media practice exercise thing when I was doing a marketing course way back when. This is probably close to 15 years ago. Oh my word. For when I was doing my fitness stuff before. And I drew multiple things about alcohol on my little avatar of who my ideal person was. I think I had a wine glass and a vodka. And that was part of who I was. And then when I let it go, I'm like, oh, that's not me anymore. Okay. This will be interesting to try to figure out. You lose a piece of you, right? So you have to rebuild that you. And that's hard and scary. So, like I said, I wanted to share some of those top barriers because they're real. And why just pretend that they're not there? If we pretend they're not there, I almost think that's adding another level of complexity. So that's why even when I'm coaching somebody, we talk about the obstacles. We don't pretend they aren't there. You need to talk about them so you can strategize about, okay, if XYZ pops up, what am I going to do? Right? There is no point in lying and saying breaking a cycle is going to come challenge free. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. You might be surprised and it's actually easier than you think, right? But lying to yourself and saying, it's going to be easy peasy, that's just not the best move typically. As I said, I have broken, several cycles. I'm addicted to breaking cycles is the joke, Obviously, I broke the cycle with alcohol. 4.5 years sober almost at this point. But with that, I also know, and I knew before I even gave that up, I have a very addictive personality. I know that I have to be cautious because I could very easily create unhealthy cycles in my life. Sometimes if you're aware of that, you can actually avoid even creating a cycle. Like, for example, I don't gamble because I've watched too many people I love and care about get addicted to gambling. And that can ruin your life in a completely different way. So for me, it was just, I always tease and say, I can spend that money shopping instead. True. Facts. I do. Right? But I also set that up as like a statement to myself to not allow myself to get addicted to that because I've watched too many people and I know that personality factor is in me and it's strong. So, when I went to Vegas for business, everybody gambled a little bit. I did not. I know better. I'm like, why, put money in there? I'll just go spend it on a Starbucks instead. For myself, another cycle that I broke was abuse. I left my first marriage, we separated, and I'm incredibly thankful to God for that. But in my brain, still to this day, I'm like, I was able to stand up for myself as I went through that process and break an unhealthy cycle that I had going about abusive, unhealthy relationships. Also knowing that my parents, I think, did as best they could. They also, I don't think, had a ton of knowledge on finances and what to do to be as successful as they could in the financial realm of the world. So I made sure to kind of break that cycle by learning more about finances and learning a little bit more about investing and things of that sort, so that not only am I breaking that cycle for myself, but I've been very focused on breaking that cycle for my kids as well. Making sure I'm setting them up for a healthier cycle also. And then just in general, really focused a lot. I have been focused a lot these last few years about breaking unhealthy relationship cycles that I have in my life beyond just romantic relationships. Because you can have unhealthy relationships in the romance side of your life, but you can also have unhealthy cycles in other friends, family, coworker relationships also. So I share that not to toot my own horn or brag. I won't lie. I'm proud of the fact that I've broken a lot of cycles in my life, and I feel I should be proud of that. But I share that because I want you to know that as I share this next section, I want to talk about tips, right? I'm not just sharing random ass tips that I dug up. I'm sharing tips that I've truthfully had to incorporate in my own life to help me break those cycles, and it has been successful. I won't say it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 step deal. It's not. I wish it was that freaking easy. It's not. You truthfully have to kind of take these tips and customize them to each and every frickin' cycle you have in your life, because each one is going to require a different sort of recipe to get you to success with it. Okay? One, you might find success very quickly. It doesn't require all of the steps, and some of them you might have to go through the steps multiple times, hitting certain ones over and over and over again. Some might get skipped, but it just is going to have to come down to 1, you, and 2, the cycle. So as we dive into these tips, I want to first state the tip that needs to kind of be the umbrella over the top of all of these is patience and self-grace. You need to know you're going to have to be patient with the process and yourself as you're going through this, and be very forgiving to yourself as well, because we are all far from perfect, and you are seriously going into a journey where you're trying to shatter a cycle that, for many of us, as I've said, is part of who we are. So that's that big overarching tip that I want you to ingrain in your brain more than anything right now. But diving into the tips. Okay, or the steps rather, right? But remember, these aren't like a 1, 2, 3 type of deal. These are all right, I'll do a little of this one and a little of that one, kind of how I cook. But the first one that I kind of want to talk about is you need to identify the cycle, right? Stating the obvious may seem like, well, that's kind of dumb, kind of a duh type of deal. But for many people, we don't want to identify it. And the first step, right? You have, just like, I think AA, this is their first step, and it may seem silly, I don't know that, but I didn't go through AA. I went a different route when I broke that alcohol cycle. But I think you have to say, I have a problem, right? Well, that has to be the first step in. So I guess I lied. I said the steps didn't go 1, 2, 3. I do think this one, for most people, I would venture a guess that 99% of us are going to have to state, this is the cycle I want to break. You have to do that first, right? You need to identify what pattern you want to break. And for some of us, this might be, just a us thing. We have never seen this before, but we are recognizing this is a pattern that I have. For some of us, this might be a thing that, dude, I've seen this go through generation after generation of my family, and I see it myself. Okay? Another step that you want to make sure you're focusing on is, okay, once you've identified what cycle it is, what's the impact? Who is it impacting? How are they getting impacted by this cycle? And I think it's important to acknowledge, obviously, the impact it's having on you. But if this is impacting other people you love and care about, do not skip that part. I honestly think this is going to be the hardest component for many people, because identifying how it's impacting people you love fucking hurts. It hurts your heart so much, depending on the cycle, okay? But it can also take the why behind why you want to stop this cycle and deepen it to a level that it just gives you so much more motivation to break the cycle in the first place. Also knowing that another step in this whole process is seeking help. And I talked about this earlier, right? Making sure you have those people in your corner. It can be people in your life. I shared in the episode where I talked about my rock bottom that I immediately shared this with my family and my closest friends, that I was ending drinking. I was no longer going to drink alcohol. I wanted to have that support. Another way that you can, deepen that support pocket, but also maybe dig into more resources, things of that sort, is by finding a professional. I'll lean right back into saying, make sure you find a solid professional that actually cares about you genuinely. They have a kind heart. They understand you. They're supporting you in a way that you can actually feel the support. There's professionals out there that, they want the paycheck. That's all they care about. But then there's going to be plenty of professionals out there that, yes, they'll take the paycheck. Don't get me wrong. But they actually want to see you succeed as well. Another tip is making sure that you're developing new habits and behaviors to kind of replace those old ones. In addition to that, you want to be developing new skills and behaviors that are going to help you break this cycle, right? So this may mean that, hey, I know that I need to be better about setting boundaries, or I'm going to have to learn better ways to care for myself instead of drink or do drugs or watch porn or whatever you're trying to break, right? Whatever habit or cycle you're trying to break. You need to really start to know there's a learning component to this, because you're going to have to figure out what's going to have to come in instead. As simple as, hey, I'm going to quit smoking every day after I eat my dinner. I typically would go out and have a cigarette. What do you need to sit and learn to plug in there instead? Right? Maybe, okay, instead I'm going to have a glass of water. Or I wanted to say chocolate, but I also hear a lot of people complain that they gain weight after smoking. Is water going to fix that cure? Probably not. Who knows? Maybe you need just a small sweet treat, or I'm going to play with my kid for 15 minutes instead during that window that I would typically smoke. You need to start to put new behaviors and new habits in play, and also know that a lot of times is going to require learning, right? Some trial and correction as well. And then my last piece is you need to make sure that you're staying committed. This is not going to be a one and done type of thing for most people. I think we've all heard those magical stories of, oh my word, I quit smoking in a day and it was easy peasy. Or for most people, it's not a one-time thing. It's going to be an on our brain type of thing more than once to really break that cycle truly and recreate a new habit. It didn't take me just one Saturday evening of being like, oh, it's time to go to the bar. Oh, just kidding. I'm not drinking. I'm not going to the bar. There were a few I would say a lot of Saturday evenings where I'm like, well, shit, I'm not going to the bar. What am I going to do instead? Right? Before it just became my norm that I'm not going to the bar. Because I will be honest, yesterday, Saturday evening, I was more sad that we had to go out to eat at like a bar restaurant than I got to hang out at my house in my comfy clothes and hang out with my fam and just relax. We often do that now. And it was weird for me to rewire my brain and be like, oh, I'm going out on a Saturday evening instead. But we're 4.5 years in. It took a long time for that swap to happen. So a bonus tip / step for those people out there that your mom, or, if you're a dad listening, but I know that a lot of females are listening, which I love it. But a bonus step is teach your kids this, especially if you are breaking cycles in your life. And number one, you're proud of it. But number two, you want your kids to learn from that experience. So hopefully they avoid those cycles. Or if they do happen to follow a path, a cycle that you went down, they're able to break it easier because of what you're sharing with them. Don't hide it behind, a black curtain, a hush-hush type of deal. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm not telling my kids that. Because, they can learn from our mistakes or our experiences. Why shelter them from that? That's obviously my personal opinion. Take it or leave it. But I do feel like a lot of times, it can be more inspirational if it comes from mom and dad. So often we hear, about the generational bad cycles. Why not create a positive of, I'm going to create a cycle that I'm going to teach my kids? It is totally possible to break unwanted cycles. All right. So I told you about how I personally have broken down some cycles, obviously. But I want to be upfront and say that, I am far from freaking perfect. I still have a lot of cycles in my life that I want to break. For example, I have a very strong scarcity mindset. That is a cycle that I really struggle with. And I've been, upfront and honest about it. I will be transparent that I've gone through EMDR about it, and I still am stuck in that. I pray on it. Please know that it's a journey, just like any other freaking thing in our lives that we want to improve. There is a total journey path there. And we are always going to be, quote unquote, under construction as human beings. God didn't create us perfect. He didn't intend to. But that doesn't mean that I'm not still continuously working on those things, following my own tips as well. I've worked on my own tips, for example, the scarcity mindset one I've been working on for quite a while on my own. I had a mentor involved at one time. Like I said, I did EMDR. I've prayed on it. I just finally actually sat down with my husband recently and was like, okay, I need to, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I need to deepen my support on this. Talked to my husband about it and was like, hey, I don't know how to break this cycle by myself. I need your help. I know you don't think like I do when it comes to this topic. I need your perspectives. I need your support. I need your accountability. So know that, yeah, I can break some cycles. I can struggle with others. But the biggest thing is, remember, breaking a cycle or building a healthier one, which we'll dive into a little bit more next episode, it's not easy. But it's 1,000% possible. With time, a little bit of effort, right? Some blood, sweat, and tears, and support. We can break free from the patterns, that are in our life, either from the past that have been there forever or new ones that we've noticed and seen. We can get rid of them and we can create the future that we truly do want, not only just for ourselves, but for our family as well. I want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. I hope it was helpful. And remember, make sure to tune in to next episode as well, because we're going to talk about the flip side of this. Once we have broken those unhealthy habits, how to rebuild healthier ones as well. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ramblings of an Addict with Jenna Dix. Remember, if you are battling an addiction, reach out for help and support. There are many resources available to assist in your journey towards recovery. Surround yourself with a supportive community and never give up on the path towards a healthier and happier life. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and joining me on this journey. As you heard, I'm always rambling. But seriously, thank you for your support and make sure to subscribe and follow my channel. I can't wait to share more with you on the next episode. Until then, keep on rambling. If you have found this podcast helpful and want to dive deeper into personal growth and self-improvement, be sure to head over to my website, jennadix.com. You'll find a wealth of resources there. There is a little less drugs, sex, and rock and roll these days, but whether you're interested in getting healthy, information on momming or parenting, or politics, jennadix.com has something for everyone. So, what are you waiting for? Head to jennadix.com today and start your journey towards personal growth and self-awareness. See you there.